right?
Correct.
Can you please explain the difference between the definitions of telework and remote work?
Yes, remote work is 100% from a different location and can include living entirely thousands of miles away. Telework is having the ability to work anywhere from 1 to 5 days a week at a remote location.
Okay. Can an agency force a federal employee to telework? Like similarly, can an agency force a federal employee to show up for work?
Yes, and we saw that happen during COVID-19. There was forced telework that happened, and they should have the ability to force an employee to show up to work. But when you have problematic components that are baked into the cake for the new administration that prevent, such as deputy commissioners at SSA, from having that authority because of a collective bargaining agreement, that's arguably counter to the law.
Do you feel it's within the purview of the President of the United States to set the work schedule for federal employees across the board?
I do, and in particular telework, that's what the Telework Act of 2010 requires.
Ms. Cross, do you agree with that assumption that the President of the United States has the broad authority to set work requirements for federal employees? Well, you can't think about it now, Ms. Cross. We're here. We're on the fly. Do you think it's under the purview of the President to set work requirements for federal employees? Since essentially in our system of government, we have a unitary executive, and the President of the United States is the executive branch.
Sure.
Okay. Mr. O'Malley, do you agree with that assessment that the President of the United States has the unilateral authority for setting work requirements for federal employees?
No, under the law, he has the ability, but
Mr.
it's
O'Malley.
not unilaterally. He has to abide by the law. At least in a republic, you abide by the law.
Mr. O'Malley, do you believe that the President of the United States is the executive branch? Whether it's President Trump, President Biden, President Obama, President Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, President Reagan, do you believe that the President of the United States is the unitary executive and is the executive branch?
Yes, and he has to abide under the law. He has to obey the law.
So you mean to tell me that the President of the United States doesn't have the ability to set work requirements?
I'm saying that he does, but he has to do so under the terms and the rule of the law. And so, and contract law and things contained in agreements that are negotiated under the law are things that the president has to be mindful of and should be, and should be guided by.
When you signed this agreement with the unions over at the Social Security Administration, did you do it purposefully to undermine President Trump on his way in the door?
No, I did it to sustain the big customer service delivery improvements that this greatly depleted agency had made in the course of the year, and to try to staunch the attrition rate and the fact that so many are eligible for retirement. The reduction in staffing is really hurting a lot of seniors in every one of your districts, a lot of people with disability, a lot of our poorest people that are on SSI. I did what I did in order to better serve the American people.
But when you set this agreement, knowing that the presidential election had already been decided, did you call Mar-a-Lago and say, hey, what's your opinion on this?
No.
Did you ask President Biden to reach out to President Trump in a matter of transition and say, hey, which way do we want the next president to be able to administer the employees that are under his purview as the unitary executive?
I worked for President Biden. He appointed me, and I was confirmed in a lopsided bipartisan margin by the Senate, and I executed the duties that I was assigned at Social Security to better serve senior citizens, better serve people on SSI, and people with disabilities. That's what I did, Congressman.
My counter argument to you, Mr. O'Malley, is that whether it's whatever president we're talking about, they all have the same duty to serve the seniors who were promised something on Social Security, and that mission is going to be executed regardless of party, regardless of president. But, sir, what you did was to essentially do a workaround of the incoming administration. But I'm going to come back to you later. Ms. Grezler, I'm going to come back to you. You stated earlier in your testimony about we do have an issue with some of the federal employees who are doing work, union work, on federal government time. Can you expound upon that?
Yes, unfortunately, we don't have any more data on that because the Biden administration stopped collecting that. But if you use what the Obama administration, those figures, and convert them to today's salaries, taxpayers are paying over $300 million per year to pay federal employees to step away from the jobs they're hired for and to instead go do union work on taxpayers' dime.
Mr. Chairman, if you will oblige, what is some of do you have an idea of some of the work that's being done on federal government time for the unions that they're a part of?
That can include negotiations, it could include lobbying Congress, it can include helping employees to file grievances or unfair labor practices if they have their telework policies taken away from them.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that it's in the interest of this committee and frankly of the United States going forward that we find out exactly what work is being done while employees are being paid by the federal government that is not within the purview of the job that they were hired to perform. I yield back.
Absolutely. Chair now recognizes Ms. Ansari from